In a blue coastal town lived a little boy who loved being friends with the sea. His name was Alex. He would spend his days on the shore collecting stones and telling stories to the waves. His biggest dream was to discover the secrets hidden by the sea. One morning, while walking on the beach, something shiny caught his eye in the sand. When he approached and picked it up, he realized it was an unusual seashell. The surface of the shell was covered with patterns that looked as if they were finely carved, and its color had a silvery sheen. But the most interesting thing was that when he held it to his ear, he could hear not only the roar of the sea, but also a whisper. "Can you hear me?" Alex, startled with excitement. Had a voice really come from inside the shell? He listened again. "Is there anyone who can hear me?" said the voice, with a soft but distinct tone. Alex felt his heart pounding rapidly. How could a seashell talk? In astonishment, he whispered back, "Yes!" "I can hear you. Who are you?" The seashell vibrated slightly, as if the voice inside had smiled. "I was once a guide who guarded the greatest secret of the seas, but I got lost years ago, and now I've washed up on this shore. If you have the courage, I can take you on a great discovery." An indescribable excitement filled Alex. An adventure. Was there really a secret hidden by the sea? He looked at the sea. The waves were crashing on the shore as if calling him. "Where will you take me?" he asked curiously. "Under the water. There is a forgotten map, and that map holds the greatest secret of the sea." Alex thought. The sea had always fascinated him, but diving underwater was something completely different. He was scared on the one hand, but on the other hand, he didn't want to miss this opportunity. Clutching the seashell tightly in his palms, Alex ran quickly from the beach towards home. The excitement inside him fluttered like a bird in his chest. If there really was a map under the sea, there might be many things he needed to know before finding it. That's why he should talk to the most knowledgeable person he knew, his grandfather. His grandfather Henry was one of the oldest fishermen in the town. He had sailed the seas for many years, battled storms, and seen many things lost in the depths of the waters. He lived in a small hut by the shore, sitting in his old chair, looking into the distance and listening to the whispers of the sea. When Alex knocked on the door, a deep voice rose from inside. "Come in, young man. You clearly have something to tell." When Alex entered, he saw his grandfather sitting as usual among old maps, seashells, and old books smelling of salt water. An old lamp on the table cast a flickering light. "Grandpa, I need to ask you something." His grandfather narrowed his eyes and smiled. "It doesn't escape these eyes, my boy. Your eyes always shine like this when you return from the shore. What did you find?" Alex took the seashell out of his pocket and handed it to his grandfather. Henry took the shell in his hand and examined it carefully. For a moment, his eyes seemed to drift into the past. This is no ordinary seashell," he murmured. Alex jumped in excitedly. "I know. It talked to me. It told me there's a map under the sea and that I need to find it." A smile mixed with astonishment appeared on his grandfather's face. "So, it chose you. This is truly interesting." Alex approached curiously. "Grandpa, what kind of shell is this? What is the secret of the sea?" Henry took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair. "My boy, a very long time ago, there was a great civilization that stretched along these shores. They had become friends with the sea, people who could talk to the waves. The sea brought them abundance. The wind whispered to them, and the stars showed them their way. But one day, greed prevailed. People began to be unsatisfied with what nature had given them. They wanted to seize the greatest secret of the sea, its timeless wisdom." Alex held his breath. What happened then? His grandfather's eyes filled with sadness. The sea hid its secrets. Since that day, no one has been able to access this knowledge. But some legends say that a map is still hidden somewhere. That map carries the lost knowledge of the sea. Alex thought for a moment. So, this shell, why is it talking to me? His grandfather looked at the shell once more and shook his head. This could be one of the oldest guides of the sea. Perhaps it chose you to find this lost secret. 1,000 questions filled Alex's mind. Now he was even more curious, but there was a choice before him. Grandpa, we must investigate this. Henry remembered his old days. All right then, young man. Alex's heart was pounding with excitement. Sailing out to sea with his grandfather, going after an unknown secret. This was an adventure he couldn't even have dreamed of. Henry went to the helm of his boat and ran his hands over the old salty planks. This boat has been friends with the sea for years. It has weathered many storms and found many lost things. Let's see where it will take us, he said, winking at Alex. Alex jumped into the boat with excitement. His grandfather dipped the long oars into the sea and slowly began to row out. The sky was turning shades of orange and pink, and a light breeze rippled the surface of the water. As the small town receded from the shore, Alex took the seashell out of his pocket. So, what do we do now? He asked. The melodious voice echoed from inside the shell. Listen to the sound of the sea. The path will reveal itself to you. His grandfather smiled slightly. Listening to the sound of the sea. That's something many sailors have forgotten, my boy. Alex looked at the sea. The waves were gently swirling, forming light rings on the surface of the water. Suddenly, he noticed that the color of the sea had changed. The water beneath their boat had turned a deep blue shade. Grandpa, look! There's something here! He cried. Henry stopped rowing, narrowing his eyes at the water. This could be near the lost coral island mentioned in legends. Alex leaned over excitedly. There were shadows moving under the water. Golden shapes appeared through the waves. It was as if something was hidden there at the bottom of the sea. We must dive here, said Alex. Henry shook his head. Then get ready, my boy. Take a deep breath and let the water guide you. Listening to his grandfather's words, Alex took a deep breath and let himself into the coolness of the water. When he dived, a magical silence suddenly surrounded him. When Alex opened his eyes, he was amazed by the beauty around him. Coral reefs shone in vibrant colors, and small schools of fish danced around him like light. But the most striking thing was an old stone tablet shining among the sands. Alex quickly swam towards it. When he cleaned the stone, he noticed that the symbols on it resembled the patterns on the seashell. His heart pounded with excitement. This must be part of the map. But at that moment, he felt a strange movement in the water. He opened his eyes and looked up, seeing his grandfather Henry swimming towards him, but also noticing a large shadow gliding a little further away. A moray eel was heading towards them. Henry gestured to Alex to return, but Alex was determined to get the map. He carefully pulled it out of the sand and quickly began to swim upwards. Henry followed immediately. The two were breathless when they got back on the boat. Alex handed the old stone to his grandfather. I found it! This is definitely part of the map. Henry examined the stone carefully. It is indeed, but this is not the whole map. We must find the other pieces. Alex asked excitedly. So what do we do now? Clutching the stone tablet tightly in his palms, Alex turned to his grandfather with excitement. Grandpa, this is just one piece. If we want to complete the lost map, we need to find more clues. Henry frowned, his eyes scanning the waves gliding over the water. You're right, my boy, but the sea is not always friendly. We don't know what we might encounter in the open sea. Alex's eyes sparkled. But we are sailors who are not afraid of the sea. Besides, this shell told me it would guide me. We can do it together. His grandfather smiled at him and nodded. Then let's set sail. Henry unfurled a small sail hidden in the boat, and Alex gripped the ropes tightly. A light breeze had begun to blow, as if calling them to an unknown path. For hours they sailed, the sky slowly darkening. As a crimson sun set on the horizon, twilight, tinging everything with blue hues, descended. At that moment, they noticed something strange on the surface of the sea. Although the water was still, some spots were frothing. Henry suddenly pulled the sail in. This could be a sign of an underwater current. Alex leaned over carefully. At that moment, he saw something shimmering moving in the water, an object shining like gold. "Grandpa, there's something there!" he cried. Henry narrowed his eyes. "If that's really part of the map, we need to get it. But we must be careful of the current underwater." Alex took a deep breath. "I'll dive. I've dived before. I'll be very careful." Henry thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but take a weight tied to the rope so it doesn't drag you too much." Alex tied the rope around his waist and dived into the water. The underwater world was very different from what it looked like from above. As he descended, he realized that the golden object shining in the water was actually an old chest. It was half buried in the sand. Alex carefully dug away the sand with his hands and tried to pry open the chest's lid. But the lid was stuck. Just then, he heard a melodious voice echoing in the water. "Guest of the sea, you must know the secret to open the door." Alex opened his eyes. Before him, a jellyfish adorned with lights was gliding. "You! Can you talk?" he asked in astonishment. The jellyfish danced in the water, glowing. "This chest holds the oldest secrets of sailors, but you must say the right words to open it." Alex thought excitedly. "The right words? But I don't know them." The jellyfish approached gently. "Listen to the wisdom of your elders. They may remember the past." Alex suddenly realized. His grandfather always repeated a saying. Remembering that saying, he slowly whispered, "The sea belongs to no one, but it carries the soul of everyone." Suddenly, the chest's lid creaked open. Inside, there was an old parchment. Alex excitedly grabbed the old parchment from inside the chest. The surface of the parchment was slightly worn due to the salt, but the lines on it were still visible. He had to go up quickly without wasting any more time. Taking a deep breath, he began to rise to the surface. The water gently rippled around him, and the jellyfish accompanied him with a smile. "Thank you," Alex whispered. The jellyfish glowed for a moment and disappeared. When he reached the surface, his grandfather was waiting for him anxiously. "Alex, are you all right?" he asked quickly, pulling him up. Alex smiled breathlessly and showed him the parchment in his hand. "Grandpa, I found it! I found a piece of the map!" When Henry saw the old parchment in his grandson's hands, his eyes widened. "Give it to me, my boy. We must examine it immediately." Alex and his grandfather sat side by side in the boat and unfolded the map. The surface of the parchment was old, but there were finely drawn lines and markings on it. A group of islands was drawn on the map, and there were strange symbols in some places. These islands are not on any maps we know," said his grandfather, frowning. Alex traced the map with his finger. "Do you think these islands still exist?" Henry took a deep breath. "If this map is accurate, perhaps it shows something hidden from us." His grandfather noticed a small inscription in the corner of the map. The writings were very faded, but still vaguely legible. "The waves hide the traces of the past. Find the key and discover the true seas." Alex turned to his grandfather excitedly. "The key!" There was a chest, but it only contained the map. Could the key be somewhere else? Henry thought. Some sailors leave more than one clue to protect their treasures. Perhaps this map only shows us the beginning. Alex narrowed his eyes, looking at a symbol in the corner of the map. The symbol looked familiar. Grandpa, look! I've seen this mark somewhere before, on the old stones on the great beach. Henry nodded. Then we are on the right track, but this journey will not be easy. Alex and his grandfather steered their boat towards the beach. The sun was about to set, and the sea was tinged with orange and pink hues. When they reached the shore, Alex excitedly ran towards the area with the large stones. The great beach was filled with massive rocks shaped by storms and waves over the years. Sailors used to take shelter here, finding a place protected from the wind. Alex had been here before, but only to play. Now he was on the trail of a much bigger mystery. We need to look at the big stones, Grandpa. I saw the mark on the map here. Henry nodded. Then let's examine them carefully. Sometimes clues are not immediately obvious. Alex and his grandfather walked around the stones, searching for the symbols. Some of the rocks were covered with moss, while others were smoothed by the erosion of the waves. Alex ran his fingers over the surface of the rocks. Finally, he noticed the faded traces of a symbol resembling the one on the map. It's here! He cried excitedly. The symbol consisted of lines resembling waves placed inside a circle. Henry immediately came to his side and examined it carefully. Yes, this is an old sailor's mark. But what is it trying to tell us? When Alex touched the rock, he felt a rough hollow under his fingers. Looking a little more carefully, he noticed a small hole in the center of the symbol. Grandpa, this looks like something should be placed inside, Henry thought. If this is a keyhole, then the key mentioned on the map might open something here. But there was no key in sight, Alex thought. What if the key is the seashell I found in the chest? Henry raised his eyebrows. It's worth a try, my boy. But if it's not, we'll need to find another clue. Alex took the seashell out of his pocket and carefully placed it in the hole. At that moment, a soft click sound came from the rock, and the lower part of the symbol moved slightly. His grandfather narrowed his eyes in amazement. I think we're on the right track. When they pushed the rock a little further, a small stone box appeared from underneath. There were strange markings on the box. Alex excitedly opened the box. Inside, there was an old compass and a small piece of parchment. The parchment read in faded letters, "The course of the voyager who crosses the seas is hidden in the light of the stars." Alex and his grandfather looked at each other. What should we do now, Grandpa? Henry took the compass from the box in his hand. This doesn't look like an ordinary compass. Perhaps we need to try it under the stars. Alex and his grandfather sat down on the rocks by the shore and waited for the darkness of the night. As the sun slowly sank behind the sea, the sky turned from orange to purple and then to a deep indigo. The sound of the waves crashing on the shore echoed softly in the silence of the night. Henry carefully examined the compass that had come out of the box. "This compass doesn't look like an ordinary one, Alex," he said. "Maybe it's not made to show direction, but to reveal something." Alex impatiently reread the words written on the parchment. "The course of the voyager who crosses the seas is hidden in the light of the stars." "Grandpa, doesn't a compass work without stars?" Alex asked. Henry shook his head thoughtfully. "This doesn't seem like an ordinary magnetic compass. Maybe it will show something with the light of the stars." Alex excitedly took the compass into his palms. When he looked closely, he noticed strange carvings inside the compass that looked slightly faded. But they were vague, as if something was missing. At that moment, the first stars began to appear in the sky. Then the moon slid out from behind the clouds, spreading its silver light around. As the moonlight hit the glass of the compass, the carvings inside began to become clearer. Alex couldn't believe his eyes. "Grandpa, look! The markings inside the compass are glowing!" Henry quickly leaned over and examined the compass, narrowing his eyes. Indeed, when the moonlight hit the compass, a map that hadn't been visible before appeared inside. "This must be a star map," Henry murmured. On the glass of the compass, there were small dots resembling constellations in the sky, and a line appeared in the middle. "We must follow these stars," Alex said excitedly. "But where are they leading?" Henry pointed with his finger to the brightest point that had appeared in the middle of the map. "This point's northwest. Do you know what's there?" Alex thought for a moment. Then his eyes lit up. "The Lighthouse Rock!" "It's a very old place. There's an old lighthouse built for sailors." Henry nodded. "Then we must go there, but traveling at night could be dangerous. Should we wait for morning or go right away?" Alex and his grandfather spent the night in a small tent they set up on the beach. Listening to the sound of the waves gently lapping the shore, they fell asleep under the stars. In his dream, Alex saw the glowing markings of the compass and the constellations in the sky. Something whispered to him to be patient. When morning came, as the sun slowly rose behind the horizon, Alex and Henry woke up early. While his grandfather prepared breakfast with a piece of bread and cheese, Alex held the compass in his hand, examining it again. It had lost its glow in the daylight, but the shapes they had seen at night were still vivid in his mind. "Grandpa, does the compass still point northwest?" Alex asked. Henry nodded. "Yes, we must go to the Lighthouse Rock. Something is waiting for us there." The sea was relatively calm in the early hours of the morning. They got into their boat and began to row. As Henry rowed with rhythmic movements, Alex kept his eyes fixed on the horizon. While sailing on the sea, Alex noticed how the waves crashing on the shore moved with a rhythm. Everything seemed to be in order. While the fish moved busily in the water, seagulls glided in the sky. After rowing for about an hour, an old lighthouse perched on high rocks appeared in the distance. Lighthouse Rock. The lighthouse had been abandoned years ago. It had fallen into ruin over time, but it still stood strong against the waves. Grandpa docked the boat near the rocks, and Alex carefully jumped ashore. When they reached the base of the lighthouse, Alex carefully examined the surroundings. Moss clung to the rocks, and some stones were weathered. However, the entrance of the lighthouse was still intact. When they entered, Alex saw old maps, old lamps left by sailors, and a broken telescope on the ground. But the most interesting thing was a map carved into the wall. "Grandpa, look at this!" The map looked very similar to the shapes he had seen on the compass, but there was a missing piece in the middle. Henry frowned. "Alex, bring your compass closer to the map. Maybe something will change." Alex excitedly held the compass to the empty spot on the map. At that moment, the inside of the lighthouse seemed to vibrate slightly, and the points on the map became clearer. "This is a sign! The map is showing us a place!" But the secret was still unsolved. Alex and Henry excitedly headed towards the old wooden stairs inside the lighthouse. The wooden steps creaked under the weight of time, and the wind howled through the windows of the lighthouse. Alex felt his heart pounding faster with each step. If they were on the right track, they would soon solve a great mystery. When they finally reached the top, they were inside a large glass dome. A powerful light used to shine here and guide sailors. Now there were only the sounds of the wind and seabirds. Henry took out the compass. "Come on, Alex. Keep your eyes peeled now." Alex narrowed his eyes, looking into the distance. Rocks, the shore, and the horizon stretched out before his eyes. But something caught his attention. In the middle of the sea, a light seemed to be shining faintly from under the water. It was so distinct that it could be noticed even in daylight. "Grandpa, look at that! What is that light?" Henry blinked, looking. "I've never seen anything like it before, but the missing spot on the map might be right there." Alex excitedly started to go down. "We must go there immediately." Henry nodded. "Yes, but we must be careful. We don't know what we might encounter in the middle of the sea." Alex and his grandfather hurried down from the lighthouse and returned to their boat. Alex was thrilled. What was under that light? A treasure or a much older and greater secret? The light in the middle of the water shone like a flickering star. As they approached, Alex's heart began to beat even faster. But at that moment, they noticed something moving around their boat. There were shadows coming from under the water. Alex and Henry stood silently in their boat, watching the shadows moving around them. While the waves gently caressed the bottom of the boat, the shapes in the water gradually became clearer. At first, they thought they were huge fish, but the shadows were different. They moved more regularly, as if performing a dance in the water. Henry gripped the oars tightly. "Be careful, Alex. We don't know what we're dealing with here." Suddenly, a large creature covered in silvery scales appeared on the surface of the water. It was a dolphin. But it wasn't alone. Several more dolphins surfaced after it, with their large eyes carefully watching them and their fins moving slightly. They seemed to be greeting Alex and his grandfather. "Grandpa! They're dolphins! They're watching us!" Alex said excitedly. The dolphins circled the boat, occasionally jumping out of the water as if trying to tell them something. Henry frowned. "This can't be a coincidence, Alex. They might want to take us somewhere." Alex and his grandfather carefully studied the movements of the dolphins. After a while, the dolphins began to swim towards the spot where the light was shining. "They want to take us there!" Alex cried excitedly. Henry rowed in the direction the dolphins were showing. The dolphins swam in front of the boat as if guiding them, moving as if they wanted to share the secret hidden under the water. As they got closer, the light under the water became even more distinct. It was now certain that this was no ordinary reflection. "What should we do now, Alex?" Henry asked. When Alex and his grandfather reached the exact spot above the light with their boat, they looked into the water with excitement. A dazzling golden glow rose from the depths of the water. As if a star had fallen into the ocean, the light mixed with the waves, dazzling their eyes. "Grandpa, there's something here!" Alex cried. Leaning over and approaching the surface of the water, he saw a vague shape within the glow. A stone. No, a structure. Henry also leaned over and looked, squinting. "Alex, could this be a ruin?" The shapes under the water began to become clearer. Large stone walls, moss-covered columns, and a huge structure that had succumbed to time. "Grandpa, this is a sunken city!" Alex exclaimed. He leaned excitedly into the boat and turned to his grandfather. "We must dive. We have to see what's there." Henry hesitated for a moment. "The underwater could be dangerous, Alex. We don't know what we might encounter." But Alex was determined. "The dolphins brought us here, Grandpa. There must be a reason." Henry took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, but we'll be careful." They both took a breath and dived into the water. As the cool ocean water enveloped them, the light grew stronger and stronger. As they descended, they noticed hollows between the stone walls, moss-covered marble columns, and the traces of a large gate. Alex's eyes widened. "This must have been a city once," he said. Just then, something caught their attention. Next to one of the columns, there was a stone with strange shapes on it, a symbol. Alex approached the symbols on the stone and touched it with his hand. At that moment, he felt the stone vibrate slightly. Suddenly, a large gate opened with a strong current of water. An even brighter light began to stream from inside. Alex and Henry looked at each other, holding their breath. Alex and Henry swam into the light streaming from the large gate. As soon as they entered, the temperature of the water around them changed, and a strange calmness settled. It was as if this was a completely different world. "Grandpa, this is truly amazing," Alex whispered, but his voice was lost in the water. The walls around them were made of old stones, their surfaces covered with moss. The figures carved into the walls were remarkable. People surrounded by fish, figures shaping the waves. This city must have belonged to people who lived in harmony with the water. As Alex looked around more carefully, he saw a glowing symbol on one of the walls. When he approached and reached out his hand, he felt the stone warm slightly. Just then, the ground vibrated slightly, and a large table appeared before them. In the very center of the table, the missing piece of the map lay. "Grandpa, there it is!" Henry carefully took the map and examined it closely. "This map really does hold a great secret, just as we thought." Alex and Henry safely took the map and decided to surface quickly. But just then, the stones between the gates began to tremble. Perhaps the city couldn't host them for too long. They immediately turned back and swam out through the gate. The massive stone gate behind them suddenly closed, concealing the city once more. Gasping for breath, they reached the surface of the water and took a deep breath. The sky was still full of stars, but one star among them now seemed to belong to them. Alex excitedly unfolded the map. "Grandpa, do we really understand what we've discovered now?" Henry smiled. "Yes, Alex. But this is just the beginning. We must go to the place this map shows." Alex and Henry climbed back into their boat and carefully unfolded the map. The beam of light spreading over the parchment highlighted a point in the very center of the map. "Grandpa, this must be the small island a little further from the coast," Alex said excitedly. Henry nodded. "Yes, that's the place the old sailors said was cursed, but I think it's just a forgotten story." They made their decision. They would rest until morning and set off for the island as soon as dawn broke. With the first light of morning, they set sail. The sea was calm, but there was great excitement within them. Alex held the map tightly, his eyes locked on the small island on the horizon. When they reached the shore of the island, tall palm trees and rustling leaves in the wind greeted them. As soon as Alex stepped onto the sand, he looked at the area marked on the map. "We need to go into the forest." They proceeded slowly. As they passed among the trees, they saw an old structure made of strange stones. It was adorned with seashells and wave motifs. When they reached the front of the structure, the shapes they saw on the walls were familiar. These were the symbols they had seen in the sunken city underwater. Just then, Alex took out the talking seashell from his pocket. When he held the shell lightly in his palms, a whisper rose from within. "The one who comes here must be a friend of the sea." Henry smiled at Alex, looking at him. "This is a word said exactly for you, Alex." Alex excitedly knelt down and touched the spot marked on the map. At that moment, the ground vibrated slightly, and a thin partition between the stones opened. Inside, there was a small chest adorned with sea motifs. "Grandpa, we must open this!" When Henry slowly opened the chest, an old manuscript came out, not gold or jewels. Alex seemed disappointed. "Just a book?" Henry opened the manuscript and his eyes widened. "Alex, this is not just a book. This is a text that tells the wisdom of the lost sea people, a source of knowledge forgotten for centuries." Alex carefully examined the writings. Among the pages, the secrets of living in harmony with nature, protecting the seas, and understanding the true power of water were written. "So this treasure is not material, but it adds something greater to the world," said Alex. Henry smiled. "Sometimes the greatest treasures are not chests full of gold, but knowledge itself." Alex and Henry returned to their boat with the book. The sky was blue, the sea was peaceful. Alex took the talking seashell in his hand again. Do you think the sea will whisper other secrets to us? Henry laughed. The sea never falls silent, Alex. As long as we continue to listen to it, it will have many more stories to tell. Alex looked towards the sea and smiled. The most important thing he had learned throughout this adventure was that the real treasure was the spirit of discovery and the desire to learn. And at that moment, he felt an endless desire within him to set sail for a new adventure.